Oh, is that right?
It's fine.
Of course you can. How are you
I think we'll give another minute and then we'll get started. Oh, Bob is here. Yeah. Okay. Can everybody? Do you need us to be mic'd for you to speak? Yes. Can everybody hear us? Yeah. You actually don't need to hear. But everybody else can hear. I don't need a mic for this.
Good now.
Great. Good afternoon. Thank you for. I see some faces from yesterday. I don't know if there are any new faces, but welcome to the culmination of our two-day charrette. The people who are here all day and all day yesterday are in this room. Most of them are lined up like, I don't know, what's the, what do they call that when the cops? Yeah, one of those, the lineup, thank you. So that lineup, these are the people who are here working today and yesterday on our recommendations. Plan New Hampshire has now done 64?
This is 68.
68.
This is number 68.
68 charrettes, including this one. We're a 501c3 nonprofit organization. Our objective is to focus on the built environment and how the built environment interacts with communities and how communities interface the built environment. So the charrette program is one of our signature programs. It's one where we take on different scenarios and provide recommendations through intense interaction with the people who are involved in those facilities, in this case a facility, the neighborhood, and the community at large. This is a pretty different one for us, working with families in transition and New Horizons. These are many of the folks that we work with. We've had a lot of support from Chris, who's been wonderful. He's been our host. He's fed us. He has watered us. He's made sure we had a place to get rid of the water. And he has done that with an incredible sense of humor and commitment to our success. Thank you very much, Chris, and thank you, Families in Transition. I don't know why I'm saying it that way, and New Horizons. So why did we come here? We were asked by, first, we were given an application, presented an application by Families in Transition and New Horizons to look at the block around Manchester, 199 Manchester Street, which is where the shelter is now, and the immediate neighborhood, because there was some concern about how New Horizons / Families in Transition plays as a neighbor of the broader community. We heard a lot about that yesterday and last evening. The objectives are to create a place at the site to make it more appealing, welcoming, and efficient, and to create a cohesive and coordinated neighborhood where New Horizons is a good neighbor and an element of the neighborhood that brings pride to the neighborhood. So with this, I'm going to introduce Robin LeBlanc, the Executive Director of Plan New Hampshire, who's going to give us a little piece on the kinds of people we're trying to serve here.
Thank you.
The righty goes to
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon. Thanks for being here. I just wanted to preface this by talking a little bit about people who don't have a place to live, which is the group of people that New Horizons Families in Transition serves. This is a really important issue, and as you all know, that there are myriad reasons why people do end up without a place to live. most people still see this, and this isn't here, I'm not saying you, but just in general, and this is one reason that it's so hard to address this issue sometimes, is people still see this as an issue of what people as individuals do. It's their individual choices, and they say, well, there's no choices, and poor self-discipline. And so as a result of that, sometimes you see things like, well, if we incent them by charging them and fining them for sleeping in the park or whatever, that doesn't change their behavior. And wanting to help people by giving away sleeping bags, which is great, but it's still looking at the individual. And this is perpetuated by our media and our own stories and perceptions of folks. So the stereotypes of the middle-aged guy who lost his job, he might be mentally ill, or a woman and her kids who've left an abusive relationship, or a kid who ran away from home because of abuse or neglect. These are stereotype images, and certainly based in reality. But it's a lot more than that. And the more we focus on the individuals and their struggles, the more we're stigmatizing them and the more we're othering them. Now this is just in general, we're not talking about the shelter here, but just thinking about the issue of homelessness in general. So but by doing all of this, it prevents us from seeing the systemic causes of how folks end up without a place to live. And also that there's a spectrum of this, of the situation known as homelessness. There's couch surfing. There's a lot of people that are in a home, but they may be abusive, so it's not real safe, or it's tentative, and also overcrowding. So being in a shelter or being on the streets is only one part of a whole spectrum. And in New Hampshire, one of the biggest reasons that so many people do not have a place to live is because there's a lack of places to live. There's just a lack of enough houses. And also the low wages that many people are experiencing. In spite of the low unemployment, there's still a lot of jobs with very low wages that just can't pay for a place to live. And also there is an awful lot of mental illness and drug dependency, which can lead to that. But Families in Transition and New Horizons, we have found, is doing an outstanding job. In spite of the whole systemic thing, you also have to look at the individuals they're moving along through, and they're doing such a great job. Some of you may recognize this. This is Maslow's theory, hierarchy of need. And at the very, very bottom, here, the basic needs, this is exactly what they're doing, and they're doing it so well. The basic needs that people have are food, water, warmth, and rest. And that's what this shelter and this facility gives them. It also is addressing their safety needs of security and safety. Do they feel safe? Do they feel secure? Is their body secure? Are their goods secure? Their belongings secure? And so this is exactly what they're doing in the place that we're talking about today.
Thank you, Rob. I think I'll make another point as we're looking at what are we doing today. The shelter is, as we started looking at this from the outside coming in, the neighborhood, the impact of the shelter on the neighborhood, and perceptions of people and so forth about those that are participants in the programs at New Horizons. It became really obvious very quickly that the issue was maybe not so much about the neighborhood, but the real issue is the need is so great and the facility is half the size it needs to be. And looking at opportunities for improving things in the neighborhood, we ended up getting a lot more wrapped up around needing to grow the facilities that are there to make it work. And what that does is it starts, the planning that you'll see later starts to talk about the belongingness and the friendships and the prestige and feeling of accomplishment. And ultimately, what Families in Transition is all about is getting people to the top of this triangle and moving on. So hopefully that theme comes through in our the next 45 minutes presentation. So Sarah's going to talk about our process and what we heard, and Bridie gets the floor, and the middle brings the point.
So the team got here yesterday morning. We've been here for more than the past 24 hours, some of us who stayed overnight. We started our day yesterday by taking a tour of the neighborhood, and we actually got to take a tour of the shelter, so that was guided by folks from Families in Transitions and New Horizons, who gave us a good lay of the land. We got to check out all of the facilities, the building, the greater neighborhood. We walked around the block and the food pantry, the laundry room. And then last night, so after our walking tour, we got to have lunch with the guests of the shelter in their cafeteria at their lunchtime. And then after that, we headed over here to start with the listening session. So we had a listening session yesterday afternoon with local leaders, stakeholders. We had another afternoon listening session with members of the community, and then we had a final listening session yesterday evening with members of the community. And so we went through that and transcribed all those notes and wrote down everything that you said, and all of that will be recorded in the report that comes out as a result of this. It'll also all be handed over so that you have that information. But we did start to summarize it and theme what we heard. So the first question that we asked everybody yesterday was, what do you see? And we heard a lot of things and a lot of themes emerge. So we heard a lot of people say that there's more people congregating outside of the building, inside of the building, around on the streets than there used to be. Part of that is probably that they don't have anywhere to go, or that there isn't anything for them to do throughout the day, so they're hanging out there and there's no space, designated space for them to gather. We heard a lot of people express what I basically summarized as that the area is uncomfortable. It feels dangerous, or it feels dirty, and this is both for the greater community, but also for the people in the shelter themselves express the same thing, that there's cigarette butts on the ground. It doesn't feel safe to some people, so there's a perception that it's not safe, and that it's not beautiful. We also heard people say that it's bursting at the seams, and this was framed as both a good thing, in that New Horizons and Families in Transition is doing so much wonderful work, that this building is active all the time with these wonderful programs and resources and activities. They're providing a need. They're providing a service to meet the need. But it's also bursting at the seams in the sense that it's too full and they need more space. Heard the word concrete a lot, and this really folds into the next one, which is that it isn't a place. There's a lot of concrete, there's not a lot of greenery, there's not a lot of trees, there isn't sidewalks, there isn't lighting, so it's dark at night, which adds to that feeling that it's not a space and that it's an uncomfortable place to be. We also asked people what they want to see, and we got a lot of different things. They wanted to see, I heard the word campus a lot, having this way to make the buildings so that they're connected to one another and connected to the greater community, that they're coordinated and they work well together, design-wise and beautiful-wise, and feeling like a neighborhood, and also literally having connections with each other. Someone told a story about somebody not being able to renew their library card because they had 199 Manchester as their address. We also heard a lot of things that I categorized as the small things, the things that we sort of count on a regular basis, like being able to charge our phones, so having charging stations, having somewhere to store our belongings so that we're not carrying everything we own around with us all the time, being able to have more options in the cafeteria, more food choices. There was a lot of talk about more activities and more services that are available to the shelter guests. The big one that jumped out that was repeated a lot was a training center. So some assistance and a place for people to work on things like their resume and job skills, education. And then finally, people said that they wanted it to be a warm and inviting and comfortable place. They wanted it to be a place. And we're going to talk about placemaking later, but this is beautification and trees and art and street lights and sidewalks and benches, somewhere to sit down, trees for shade for when it's 90 degrees out. And then we also asked you, what else do we need to know? And this stuff always sort of ranges the spectrum. One of the things that we heard is that education is needed to combat misperceptions. So both people who are guests of the shelter, needs some education about things that are available to them, and also the greater community needs to have a better understanding of what's going on. We heard that there are opportunities to expand, that there are properties that Families in Transition, New Horizons could possibly acquire and expand their campus and add to their campus. We heard that the pantry and the greenhouse are not used directly by the guests of the shelter, and so they may not need to necessarily be on site. So we went into today knowing that relocating these things was a possibility. And then finally, we heard you say to swing big. The staff is open to really big ideas and sort of bold strokes, and so we went with that. So
I regret having that.
Be careful what you wish.
So this morning we all came back, and the members of the design team, the wonderful design team, started doing their working. They started doing their drawing and literally playing with blocks.
Which is the best part. So I'm going to try to orient everybody to a couple things. I'm sure most of you are familiar with the site. You're going to see a lot of drawings. They're produced in some cases by people across the table from one another, Maggie and Dave. So the plan orientation got a little wonky. The final report will have all that stuff oriented. So here we are right now with the original Families, or the original New Horizons building, and an adjunct to that was Boys and Girls Club swimming pool, which is now used as the pantry, the food pantry. Parking is limited on the site. There's a small area right here. There is temporarily, at least for now, people using spaces here at the St. Casimir School building, which is also being temporarily used to house participants while this second floor is being renovated, gut renovated right now. The greenhouse we talked about, the site along Pine Street, Manchester, and then this alleyway that connects the two buildings, or the stitches together the campus. I want to point out a couple other things we heard. We understand from staff that there may be an interest in acquiring these two lots, which are owned by two brothers. It's unclear whether they get along or not. I know how I would work with my brother if I were in that situation. It would not be pretty. However, this is a potential acquisition. We also heard yesterday from the individual that owns this group of buildings who seemed anxious to sell. So we took that as a clear signal that this is probably someplace we should consider as being in play for the campus as well. So you'll see that as we present the sort of site plan. Then, yeah.
You mentioned you were using Casimir. Was that lease? Do you own that?
Well, I'm not with Families in
Okay.
Transition. Families in Transition is leasing the basement floor to house participants who would ordinarily be housed on the, actually male participants who would ordinarily be housed on the second floor of this building. The women are probably somewhere else. Some of them, yeah. That said, this building is owned by the diocese. We understand that Families in Transition is interested in an acquisition, and that this may be something that would be used potentially as transitional housing, which is one of those things that gets you up that triangle a little bit higher. Since we heard that hint, we assumed that was a given. So I think this is probably Randy's time to talk about the plan that we saw arising from all this. Pointers to the center. Big button.
So we took a look at the site overall and didn't just stay within the lot lines. We looked at the neighborhood altogether. And what we heard was missing was greenery, street trees, safe sidewalks, lighting. So we've, uh-oh. Yeah, okay.
The big no. Oh, no, no.
I got this.
You got an eyesight issue.
I They're right here.
Yeah.
So Pine Street and Manchester Street are the two streets that it fronts on. And the thought was to do some traffic calming on Pine Street by bringing landscape nodes out. This is still two 12-foot aisles. It keeps the parking that's on street here. We add street trees to give a vertical element, shade. In front of the existing building, we bump out where there's now 6 to 8 feet of just asphalt. We go out about 12 feet, 15 feet in some spaces, and that allows us to put a row of trees, creating a little more safety from the traffic that's going two-way here. We still keep the two-way traffic. There was talk of, do we do one-way, which way would it go? But there's still a reason to do two-way traffic so that it keeps all of this traffic circulation in the parking lot happening. We were also, as North said, assuming that this is a potential acquisition, and that we also heard that both the food pantry doesn't necessarily need to be, it needs to be in the location but not directly connected to the shelter itself. So one option is to take these two lots and add to the size of the existing food pantry, which is right in this area now, and then create an open space between them, just a grass area. There would be a more formalized entry that's welcoming with seating outdoors if it's a nice day. This addition would also function in and out, and I think some of the architects will talk about the layout of that later. In the back, we've added, there's existing parking here for these residents. So we've treated this like a parking lot and just mirrored perpendicular parking with a couple loading spaces. This actually adds 12 spaces plus 2 loading spaces and would be ideal for volunteers or staff or the kitchen help because they would be entering the new part of the building, or the workers from the food pantry. The architects will get into detail about the layout of the building, but what we came up with was the existing building and the proposed addition should form some sort of courtyard that gives them private space for just to, while they're waiting or spending time during the day, and there should be some activities in here. And there's a slide of that later. We'll get into the detail of the courtyard. Creating safe crossings and bringing the pavement in. Again, traffic calming, because this is a whiz-way here, and this is a one-way, and people just go, stop briefly, and go across again. So again, it sort of softens the edge of all the buildings, it softens the neighborhood, adds quite a bit of green space, open space over here, and then the courtyard, which is green space and some hardscape, and put some vertical elements of trees along Pine Street. I know in Manchester everywhere, originally there were tons and tons of street trees, and as they needed to be taken down and all of that, they haven't been put back up, because of maintenance issues and costs and all that. But it would be great to, wherever possible, since there are no overhead utilities in this area, to put the vertical elements of street trees back in and soften it, because people tend to stay where there's trees. And it's known in business districts and everything, people tend to congregate where there's trees. If there's trees, they don't sit there. And then option B for the food pantry would be to reconfigure this existing building, which has loading docks, and again, there would be this pedestrian connection that is also created here. And the on-street parking is kept all in this area. We know parking is valuable, and if this is acquired, there's an additional parking lot here. So we feel that we've balanced out the parking that we've removed right in front of the building with proposed parking here, the addition of this, and sort of a realignment of what's happening here.
So another point on parking is we understand that for staff, paid staff, there's an opportunity to park, is it a garage? Or a
Victory
lot?
Garage is 0.2
Victory
miles.
Garage. So less than a quarter mile from the site, that could be an option to alleviate, oops, I did the same thing Randy did, to alleviate some of the stresses on this site. A couple things just to be clear. We're calling these option A and B. The reason we did that is that in the event that well, there are two reasons. One is somewhat devious, and the other is practical. That if with two options on the table for the pantry, or what we're going to call the market, we're going to rebrand it, so that, or we recommend it gets rebranded as market. That we don't want to create a scenario where landowners might think, hey, this is actually going to make my property sale more fruitful for me. There are options that families in transition can follow, so that if both of these lots are acquired, that's great. If one of these lots is acquired, that's great. We can succeed either way. The other thing that's sort of key that I don't think we were very clear about, the existing food pantry is a one-story building. It was originally a swimming pool. It's terribly inefficient space. A third of that building, as it is right now, is devoted to ramp circulation and waiting, queuing, to try to attempt to connect the first floor of the existing New Horizons building to the pantry. So the amount of space that's really dedicated to pantry is approximately 3/4 or 2/3 of that existing building. For that reason, we are recommending that appendage be demolished. So is this me or you, Bob? Okay, I guess it's me. Yeah.
If I get a burning desire, I'll just...
Okay, so you jump in. So what we're showing here, this is diagrammatic. These are what we call, is it Revit or SketchUp? It's somebody much younger than me, who's highly skilled, and I have known for a number of years, put all this together. Is looking at the massing of our concept. So this is showing right now the existing New Horizons building, the pantry being removed, and a new facility down on Pine Street that really addresses Pine Street. A couple and then a new pantry. This would be what was identified as option A on that plan you just saw. So that could be the food, the market location, or that could be the market location. In this space, not only were we looking at a Costco type environment, but also the potential for some additional training space, administrative offices or whatever that could get better consolidation of administrative services on campus. The existing New Horizons building would be dedicated as a dry shelter. The what is now clinical and laundry space, which is sort of an odd marriage on the basement level. The clinic moves out of that space and moves to the second floor of a new building, which would be a little bit more dignified to approach. And our view of dignity is very important, that people who are using services here can do so with dignity. And having that up off the street level allows for greater privacy in terms of any medical procedures you might be undergoing. Above that would be wet floors, 2 male, 1 female, residential accommodation for people that have greater needs. We heard a lot about the wet and the dry people mixing, how uncomfortable that was. There'd be a higher level of service available in this other space. The clinic is right there, and we feel that separation would be important. The concept of entering the facility instead of queuing up on the sidewalk, which is what happens now on a 7-foot or 8-foot strip of pavement. This is why there's so many people hanging out here. It's just there's no queue space. Providing a point of access to a larger facility through this courtyard, coming into a central, if you can see this, would be a centralized greeting space that would be a triage zone as well. So, for example, if you're coming off the street, you don't necessarily want to check in, but you really want to clean up. take a shower, get cleaned up, change your clothes and all that stuff. You could be checked in here and then sent in to the lower level of the existing building where there would be public bathing facilities that would be controlled by staff. So you can do so privately with dignity and so forth. If you're checking in and you need to be cleaned up before you go any further, you would be going there as well. That type of thing would have that kind of flexibility. If you were in need of getting onto the so-called wet residential floors, you'd be sent to this building. If dry, you'd be sent to this building and so forth. So there's a central point of access, and then dispersion from there. But I believe, given that the courtyard is a much more friendly and inviting atmosphere, it would be a much better ingress experience for those coming in. I can't read the white. I think I did hit everything. Now I want to leave up. You can talk about the buildings.
What the heck are we doing here, huh?
Yeah.
So, so we're going to sort of walk you through the new building, and I think one thing I would just say is we arrived on location yesterday, and the guidance and suggestions and but also the freedom that we were granted by staff and the administration of Families in Transition and New Horizons has been fantastic. So we felt like we both got great information about the retaining of the core of the existing building, which is definitely a sort of a property asset of the organization. It's there's a lot of space there. It's a big, rugged building. It needs a lot of love, but it's a great foundation of space and accommodation that we can work with. But as we sort of thought initially looking at it yesterday, is we were probably 50%, if not even a bit more than that, short in terms of the space that we needed to really fully build out the program for the residential uses, the care uses, the community outreach uses with the market or the food pantry, and also the thing that we really noticed in terms of the neighborhood was, one of the most negative things was people are out on the street and they're going to the bathroom on the street. And so we thought, wouldn't it be great if we had really sort of a public welcome sort of cleanliness center, or, a personal care center, and have that be a part so that really anybody who's on the street, who's got to go to the bathroom, they can go in and find a nice, clean bathroom that's accessible to them. So some of the answers were just so clear, and it just needed to be given the proper space and the access to it. So in many ways, all of the different pieces of this, with the information we got, they kind of gave us the design. And so that was kind of, this is far more work than we ever imagined we would get to in one day's worth of work. It's kind of astronomical as we look at all of the stuff that was done. We have floor plans, buildings, we have a 3D model. There's like a week's worth of work here done in one morning. So everybody's worked really hard. So, and I got to practice architecture without a license for the entire day, working with Mr. Magician Steve back there. So in putting together this sort of fabulous, exciting building complex for the new piece. So there's some things going on here. So as you know, the pool building is going away. We're also recognizing that the present greenhouse, there's thoughts to basically relocate that to sort of an agricultural center. But we also recognize, and we had some very passionate conversations with folks yesterday who do the greenhouse, is that the presence of a functioning greenhouse on the campus is also very important, because that's both where volunteers come to be a volunteer and to connect with the population, with the folks that are residents. So we've kept a greenhouse function, and we've given it a really whole new sort of iteration as a part of the architecture of the whole new facility. So there it is, right there, on the corner of Pine Street and Monadnock. It's a 2-story atrium with a portion of it dedicated as a functioning greenhouse. It's separated from the rest of the building, but you walk by in the street and it's going to look like a conservatory. And people are going to be growing vegetables in there. We actually have 2 floors worth of greenhouse space. And all of that becomes sort of a connected series from sort of a vegetable and greenery production across through community spaces within the building to connect the new building to the old building. So this is essentially a green corridor, or a green sidewalk inside the building that's connecting all of that. We also have solar panels on the roof. This is the vertical circulation of all the stairwells, elevators needed to serve the entire complex on this end here. And then, as North was describing, we get the upper 3 floors of the building facing Pine Street here are basically the 2 floors for men, 1 floor for women, for the folks that are, we call it the wet population. Here's the healthcare, dental, and mental health care level over here. And then on the ground level, we wanted to have a very lively streetscape uses. And so as you're walking along here, there's a space allocated for a barber. It's going to be like an old barber shop. There could even be a little spiraling, the little spiral tube out in the street. There's a hairdresser. And then there's another space that's sort of flexible space that could be any variety of sort of, almost like a retail storefront. And have that be really the public face of services for the community and the residents, but also available on a walk-in basis for really anybody. So, so that's just looking at the Pine Street side over here. This is going around the corner. So here's the other part of Pine Street here. So here's, again, the 3-story residential, upper floors, the healthcare, 2nd floor, the storefronts on Pine, and then this is Manchester. And then we're coming around the corner, so you can see the new building. You start to see the entrance into the courtyard space. You see the existing building that's given a nice paint job to kind of spruce it up. And then up the street, not way up the street, but further up the street is one of the sites for the community market. So now, who's going to do the floor plan? Maggie's going to do this.
So this is the result of 2 people working on the same plan at opposite sides of the table. So it turned out upside down. Forgive us for that.
It's my handwriting though, so you wouldn't be able to read it anyway, so I'm here for translation. So the ground floor, we talked about this activation and these services that are available and how to make this new part of the building, new facility, feel as welcoming as we possibly could. So we talked about, just to orient you, we've got here the courtyard area here, and this is again Pine Street, and you're coming up Manchester Street here. So when Bob was talking about the activation, the storefront streets, we've got, the salon, we've got a barber shop, and some of the things that we were realizing, speaking to us, the need for all services. Well, the services may change. We're talking about flexible space. What do we need for education? So areas that we can have that are available for as the need arises that we have. But we also talk about entry. So we have entry for participants coming in through the courtyard, and how could you, to talk about that triage, how could you be directed into potentially, into the existing building, downstairs where you can go get cleaned up, or are you going upstairs into some of the other facilities, either the dining or into the dry section, or can you go upstairs into the clinic spaces and then the wet treatment areas. If you're coming in also, we've heard about somebody who's coming in just to use the clinic, but not necessarily the rest of the facility. Do you want a separate entrance? And how do we maintain that accessibility and the feelings? And this is something that I can go to. So an entrance here off of Pine Street as well. So there's greeters and making sure that there's plenty of direction. The great thing is about having a working greenhouse here is that it's completely visually accessible as well. But a part of that too, coming off of a courtyard here, where we talked about this idea of everybody hanging out, no place to go. We'd like to create, a cafe here and something that could be a little indoor-outdoor space, somewhere there's phone chargers, places, things like that, where you could go, you could watch the news and become connected to your community and see what's around. but also this visual connection here. Your entry, you're in a place that's welcoming, that's going to make you feel safe and dignified. And so kind of we're calling it affectionately the fern bar, but more of just, it's not the workhorse greenhouse that this is, but it's a visual greenery and it's admin space. And so come in and enjoy the green space here. So this is completely open, it's circulation, it's all part of, we're gonna greet you, be a part of our community here, and then go where you need to go. So Dave speak about upstairs functions as well, but come on up, go to the second floor, go here, or come across to the existing building.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. Just to the right.
On the right,
To the right.
Yeah.
right side.
Here we go. Okay, this is the floor right above the main floor. So we've come into that little archway under the walkway right there, and this is where we are going to have the clinic and classrooms. So we'll come in and come up either the elevator or the stairs and come into reception, waiting, a couple of offices in the middle, and double-loaded corridor with exam rooms, toilet room, a dental office, and the same on this side, and then classrooms at the end. The greenhouse is still in its location right here. We'll open up glass to the greenhouse so that when you're in the rating room, you can look through down to the greenhouse. It's a nice interior space which is open to some exterior. This is a walkway that goes between the two buildings. It'll be open to the reception area down below and that interior greenhouse right there. And we'll do something with making this open to that nice arched entry right there also. This is a typical dorm floor. There are 3 floors that'll be dormitories like this. So here again is our elevator and stair coming up, and we come into there. We'll have a toilet and shower room, common toilet and shower room for everybody. And there are 3 floors with 60 beds per floor. All right? We've managed to make little cubicles with 3 beds or 3 bunk beds for 6 people or 2 bunk beds for 4 people in this area. The second means of egress is right there. It's pretty plain and simple. It's just dormitory living. So people who are in off the streets, this is the wet part. So people who need a place to crash come in here. Who's up next?
I guess that's me.
There you go.
So, I know this is probably pretty overwhelming. And I'll have something to say about that later too. The graphical, I did the same thing. The graphical treatment is really, we're looking at some different opportunities for how maybe to enliven the building. So these are notional only. Don't freak out. We were asked to swing for the fences, and we may have been going for a grand slam. That's okay. Yeah, but that ball's still in the air. So taking a look now at the existing families in transition buildings. So going from the lower floor up. Presently, there we go. Presently, this is the existing stairways. That's the footprint of the existing building. Right now, that was occupied by the clinic, the laundry, and a meeting room, and just a lot of things are happening there that are all accessed right now by the general public through stair number 2 only. We're proposing an addition on the lower wing, or towards option A, the sort of uphill side of the site. That would include an elevator to access all floors as well as at street level. This has a significant personal secure storage area. These dotted lines represent a wire mesh type enclosure concept. This would all need to be managed by staff. There's actually a fairly large staff presence on this floor. These folks would be managing not only the personal secure storage area, but these cleaning areas, the laundry, and then just a general staging area to allow some flexibility for staff and participants. If something's going on, you need to stack up, 12 baskets of dirty laundry, that's where we go. Maintaining the existing stairs, this is connecting to the building you saw presented earlier, so that's happening right here. This is the new space, and that's the old space. So if somebody was directed from that common point of entry down here, they would access it this way. If they needed to for accessibility, to access it by elevators, I'll show you the other plan how they get into the building. One thing I don't think we really mentioned, but was really, I thought, critical, is the idea that that there's a control point to this campus for people that are accessing this building. We heard about having way too many doors for managing people and so forth. The single point of entry would have to work something out with how we sort of keep the public side and the private side kind of separated, but that's certainly feasible and would certainly be desirable. So when you look at stair 2, stair 1, these are egress out only. There would not be a point of access to the building or entrance to the building. The first floor still holds the functions that you see now are still there, but they've been kind of reimagined a bit. A servery area with a kitchen the kitchen area is approximately twice the size of what it is now. A cold and a dry storage zone, which presently occupies an exterior wall, or what would be an exterior wall here. Here's that elevator lobby you would access if you're bringing materials in or out of the kitchen. That's accessed from the Manchester Street side through those doors up a half level and into the kitchen. Again, these are the existing stairs. Some flex space. So this may be, you might want to have some administrative people here, or use it more for a smaller dining situation for whatever reason. Just having the ability to do more of what you want. These bathrooms would be completely blown up and replaced with the current state-of-the-art bathrooms that have doors on the stalls and not curtains that get used as tourniquets, and be fully physically accessible as well. The dining room, with this new concept, actually has views to the outside. So that courtyard that you entered would have windows looking out onto the courtyard. We would have access. We propose having some kind of a balcony so that in nice weather people could eat outside. Off of that balcony, this would not necessarily be connected to the courtyard below, but be accessible from inside the building. You see that there's a food counter here, so if they're just individuals that want to grab a quick bite, more of a standing height thing, those little ticks here represent charging stations. There are charging stations here, there are charging stations here, so that people can get their cell phones charged up. So this would still, we would envision this still operating the way it does now, as meals for participants, as a soup kitchen for the general public, and so forth, all coming in through the courtyard. Upstairs, this would be where the dry community would go. Point out a couple of things here. The women's dorm, the respite stations, the viewing offices, all that, women's bathroom, these are all exactly as configured when the current renovation is complete. So more than half the floor can actually be retained. What you do lose is the men's bathroom was here, but because of elevator access, that would have to go away. Not the end of the world. It was, I think, contemplated to be sort of temporary space anyway. So what happens is a little bit more separation between the women and the men, with the exception of the respite space, which is still monitored from these offices. The men's dorm sits on top of the kitchen expansion. Men's bathroom sits over the storage area you see in the kitchen. Again, stair 1 and 2 configured as existing. And so what we have in the red here is a little bit more commodious circulation around the second floor. Some of the features that are new, we have a computer lab and a library space that's available to participants. And we heard a lot about a need for training rooms. So these actually would be training rooms. So I proposed that they were glazed so people can sort of see the activity that's going on there as training is conducted. So now we're back to the market.
All right, so as North, Randy, and others mentioned, one of the big discoveries we made was that the market food pantry as it currently stands does not necessarily want or have to be programmatically tied to the shelter and the other components of the program. We explored multiple options for relocating the market. And so this is one potential location shown in 3D, and we're going to show you a plan that's a little more diagrammatic than the others just because it can be proposed, it works on any of the sites. But this was a big discovery for us, and then the clientele, the participants who use the market might not necessarily be using the shelter, and there might be concerns about safety or, oh, I shouldn't be going there because I don't feel comfortable. But we really want it to be an inviting environment, and we really want to, as others have mentioned as well, make it feel more like a market. You're not going to the food pantry, you're going to go to your grocery shopping, and we want it to be an inviting space. So again, this is sort of diagrammatic, but whatever the particular site that is chosen, having a receiving department with ample types of storage, miscellaneous, cold, tempered, otherwise, receiving offices. And one of the things that we also discussed and learned from residents is they don't want to just go into a space and sort of be nameless, faceless, voiceless, but offering waiting area, lobby, reception. So if you're new to the market or you're not sure how it works or you want help with something, you can come in and there's someone, even if it's just to say, hi, how you doing today? Oh, we got a delivery of whatever, and to humanize the experience and make you feel, give you some dignity and a sense of belonging. There was mention of spaces for possible culinary demonstrations or life skills classes, so having some flex spaces off the main market floor for possible educational seminars or classes. And then also, the main moment is the market floor and trying to make it just feel like a place you want to go and be, and it's not just pallets on some metal shelves, but it's, oh, I'll go look at vegetables, this or that, and someone can tell me about what we've got going on, and I can go check out and see what there is and make it feel like a more humanizing experience. There's also the possibility of incorporating some of the clothing and or retail facilities within this new relocated facility as sort of a, almost like a shopping location for residents or just a pickup location that sort of captures all those needs in one place.
So we took a look at the courtyard space, which is in here. This is also oriented upside down, so it might be hard to follow. So here's Manchester Street. This would be where we had pulled out trees, so this would be tree lined out here. But it was how are people going to get from Manchester Street into this main entrance that sends them in either direction to the new building or the existing building, and how do we make it not be the concrete jungle that exists out there? So we thought there should be multiple pathways, there should be green space, so we started playing around with ways to get in. So there is hardscape, there's a main entrance, and then people coming from downtown, can cut through here, people coming from the east can cut through here. These two areas would just be open lawn space. There's the talk of maintenance, maybe even doing, for lack of a better word, the new AstroTurf that looks like grass. And if anybody, there's a spot of it in the mill yard, and then in Bedford, the new Friendly Toast has that courtyard out in front, and people are out playing games while they're waiting. And it is the synthetic turf and it looks from it, you have to touch it, so, no, it's synthetic turf. So this would be a good opportunity maintenance-wise, and it gives them space to just go sit on a lawn, or walk on a lawn, or contemplate. There would also be a lot of seating, laid out around, so they have a little bit of privacy. Of what I'm calling an upper wall of trees. For security reasons, obviously, plantings would be kept low and branch height would be above 7 feet, but this would give a canopy and give them some sort of enclosure so this is their space, their home. There's the possibility of a sculpture garden or some other art installation. The cafe that's proposed could have outdoor seating in this area. Plantings against the front, again with seating walls. Jody will talk about interactive art and placemaking, but there's 2 areas here for that to happen. This is that balcony where the dining room could spill out onto, and that would be about 5 feet in elevation, so there's an opportunity there for art installation and all kinds of interactive play. How do I get to the next? I did it. So again, this is a very quick sketch. This is Manchester Street. The existing sidewalk would be brought out, green space would be added. There would be the street trees here, but then again, there'd be all these pathways in. There'd also be a way to just keep, walking around and not having to make a decision. If you're in sort of a state of mind where you might confront a decision, it might throw you off. So you could just keep, taking a different path, turning around, going back through. This is that upper balcony that spills out from the dining room. Again, the opportunity for art installation, seating along. This is the cafe, would spill out over here with tables and chairs. And again, these 2 lawn spaces would just be open, flat lawn for recreation.
So this slide just goes over what Randy was saying. It all seems kind of repetitive now. We keep hearing this term, inclusion, self-worth, a sense of belonging. And that's the stuff we heard directly from the participants when we spoke with them yesterday afternoon. So a lot of the design in the open space, the courtyard, and the building space is really geared towards making sure there's a sense of belonging from the participants. So we're here to obviously serve the need of New Horizons and families in transition, but we're also here to address some concerns that the neighbors had. So creating the sense of place works on both ends. It works with participants and it also works with the neighborhood. So what we're trying to do is create meaningful interactions, and that can be done through art. And that can be done through art through landscaping, it can be done through art through murals on the building. So when we incorporate all art in the overall design, it aids in the stabilization of individuals that particularly are vulnerable to displacement. One thing Randy mentioned in the design, we are incorporating some interactive art along this wall. The idea of that, and I apologize if I'm going too fast with this, these are pieces that are stationary, that cannot be, for lack of a better term, destroyed, and people can calmly go up to them, manipulate them, work with them. This right here, this is an example of some interactive art. These are spheres, and people go up to them and they move. So you can change them to black or yellow. You can write things in them. You can create designs. You can just run and turn them all if you want. So creating a place where a participant can go, relax, feel like they're doing something. Something we heard from a lot of participants is that they're bored. If they want a bed when they come in, they have to check in at 6:30. And in summertime, it doesn't get dark until 9. So they're forced to sit and really do nothing. So creating a space where they can feel like they have an ability to interact, to create something, will help them give that sense of belonging and that they have a purpose. So something else we wanted to incorporate, and again, I'm going to skip back to this, is another thing we heard is that it's us and them. They're always hanging out there, and it's bothersome to me, and I can't get to my parking space, and it's always, a problem. So something we wanted to do is, rather than us and them, create all or everyone. So creating an area that brings people from the community to this space. Right now it's cold, it's a concrete jungle, nobody wants to go visit it, they feel unsafe. So creating a calm space where the participants have their own space where they're hanging out allows the public to also enjoy the space with some interactive or some murals that we put on the side. Again, I think North mentioned these are completely examples, but we want to give positive message. So creating an art piece on the side of the building that gives some sort of positive message to everyone. It's encouraging people to move forward and continually improve and to not give up. So again, that interactive art piece would be here. And the space we're thinking for the open space, it's very calming for the participants. So we're not thinking any large, crazy murals in that space. It's calm, it's dignified, it's a place where someone can relax. We also talked about putting some hidden speakers, maybe some faux rocks or something for an ambient music. It also functions if there needs to be some sort of intercom system, if there needs to be a message that gets sent out to everyone. They can do that through that sound system. So really, the murals, going back to the murals, they contrast the negative mental health effects of concrete and asphalt, which is currently what we're dealing with right now. It's a very cold, dark neighborhood. There's really not a lot of street trees, if any. So we're trying to get rid of that stigma. So again, please go on.
Yep. So there's a lot of information here. We were told to think big. We thought big. Don't get scared of that. There's ways to break these down and to look at this strategically so that over time, this larger vision can be realized. It's not a one-stop, we're going to get it done type of scenario. From the standpoint of what we are doing as a charrette team, is we're providing you with recommendations. We're just giving you the starting point. You may hate the idea, an idea or two in this. That's fine, but you need to make it your own. Because if it's your own, you're going to believe in it. It's going to be a vision that you'll be able to follow, something you can fundraise for, something that will make a big difference. So the big ideas that we really want you to hold on to is creating dignity for participants, creating an environment that is not invasive or obstructive to the neighborhood. That a lot of what's happening, we realize, has less to do with the people and more to do with the options they have with the facility that's there now. The facility does not have the size to do everything that it needs to do. With families in transition becoming more prominent in the operation of the shelter, there's a lot more that families in transition plans to do with the people who are in the shelter. So there's a lot of need that comes along with that too. So don't think that this is some pie in the sky dream. We're increasing beds. I think that's a reality. This is one of the few shelters in the country, in the United States, that is open to anyone. And one of the shocking things that we heard yesterday is there are communities that take people that they can't deal with or won't deal with. They staple a bus ticket to their shirt and throw them on a bus to Manchester. Let them get dealt with here. It's outrageous. But it's real. So our thinking in terms of overall bed count is it does need to be bigger. That you might be seeing 150 a night on a winter night on average. 200 is not a stretch. 250 is not a stretch. So you have to think big if you're going to deliver on the vision that you guys have, which is really incredible. So it's a starting point, it's not an ending point. And I think that also works if you look at it in the context of that Maslow's pyramid that we saw earlier. we're dealing with the bottom part of the triangle now. And what I understand and have absorbed of the mission of Families in Transition is that your objective is not just the bottom 2 layers. It's moving people through that cycle so that this is not, as nice as we've made this and dignified as we've made this, this is not where people are going to end up. This is where people go to get that hand to help them up for the future. This is an incredible experiment, and the fact that you guys are among the few in the country doing this work is really special and something I'm very proud of to have a small part of thinking about that for the future. So with that, we're open to any questions that you might have.
First, a comment, fantastic presentation, great vision. Thank you for your efforts.
It was actually, this one was a lot of fun.
Cool.
My concern was not that we'd have a lot of fun. We had so many people that wanted to volunteer for this.
Wow.
And we didn't really turn anybody away. We had one recruit, which was Randy, and everybody else was a volunteer that stepped up to it. So my biggest fear when I walked in today yesterday was, got a lot of people here. I don't know how we're going to manage to work together to get this thing together. It was a great team to work with, and that they do us all proud. So thank you for that. Thank you guys. Yep.
On the 3D presentation, it looked like the market was 2 floors, but you only showed a plan for 1.
Yeah, we were, as you can well imagine, as we were working from 9 to 3, which is really 2:30. One of the things we wanted to think about was to think flexibly. So, 1-story building isn't always the best use of space. It may be that there's some functions that happen here that maybe administratively it makes sense to have some more administrative offices on top of that marketplace. That we could, there'd be some flexibility for some massing of them. So that's what that really is talking about. And the fact is that we ran out of time.
But what's shown would be sort of a flexible community space. That was what we had.
Yes, sir.
Hey, how you doing? My name is Mark. Quick comment and a quick question and a comment. Fantastic job for taking on this challenge. This has been way long overdue for the city of Manchester, and you call it an experiment, but it's been something that should have happened a long time ago, and I'm glad that you're putting all the efforts with all the volunteers and staff to do this. Love that wall that you had there with the yellow and the black. I can see people going there putting "Will you marry me" on that. It's the first thing I thought of. Not for me, but for somebody else. My question is, have you taken any consideration as far as surveillance or security? As far as, like you're looking at the courtyard there, and I'm thinking of people that don't make it in time to get into New Horizons, that have no place to go, or clubs that are getting out at a certain time and they have no place to go. It's nice and secluded. Is there any surveillance, especially with the trees there? I can kind of see.
Well, the trees, the canopy's set so that you can see through them, and the shrubs are low enough that you can see over them. With this courtyard and entrance thing, and this sort of comes down to how the facility is managed, but I would anticipate that there would always be somebody at this desk who's willing to help somebody else, and they would be able to monitor that courtyard.
Will be well lit up.
Lighting is, I thought Randy mentioned it, but street lighting and lighting in these open spaces would be a critical part of it.
Right.
People talked about that last night as being a very important piece.
Thank you for all you're doing.
Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
I'm amazed that so many of the points that we discussed at our table yesterday were incorporated into your plan. And my first meeting with Bob was great. I thought that he was really open to listening to the concerns of that I had and a few of my colleagues had. So it wasn't all set in stone. It seems like it was more fluid, this group, about thinking. And I just think you're great listeners, so thank you.
As you all were talking, at some point, I got a little fatigued, so I went and I started writing down all the things that you had as suggestions, and I wrote them down, and then I went to the back room and I dictated them all into my phone. It ended up being a 3-page spreadsheet of all the things that need to happen within the building, within the public spaces. And I have to say that the three of you changed the entire trajectory of the afternoon in our design effort. So what you said and the way you said it made a huge difference in where we were and where we went with it. So I just say thank you. You're sort of a milestone in terms of interpretation of both the volunteers and how they represent their involvement in the community, which is huge. And, what they bring to it and what they get back from it. So that was a real game changer for us to really enhance it. And it was like each time we spoke with someone, new information that was really significant happened. There was hardly, sometimes we go into a workshop like this, and people talk for hours about things that frankly don't mean a whole lot. They seem to say they need a vent or a mat or whatever it is, but all of you folks came and you gave us just this fantastic information. And that was inspiration. So literally, as everything sort of fell together this morning, usually we're flailing around and sketching and the stuff flying all over. It just all coalesced. And again, you were a major guide on that. So thank you.
Anybody else? Well, thank you very much for coming this afternoon. This was a wonderful experience for all of us. I hope it was a great experience for you. Remember, this is just a starting point. I know that Families in Transition is starting up what do you call it? Vision committee. And I understand that they're inviting the broader community to be involved. So that's a continuation of this process. And what we were able to get from you guys, because a lot of this is just you guys giving us the stuff, and we just translate it into other things. That process is really powerful, and that I think is going to be something that'll stand this whole project in very, very good stead. Thank you, everybody. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you.